So here we are, government seeking to cut discretionary spending by an additional 10% to take away 50% of the value of fuel coupons, and also to shave off 15 pesos from the price buildup or the cost at the pumps when it comes to fuel. In all, with the cost-saving measures they are adopting, they are hoping to save, not accrue, save some 3.5 billion Ghana cedis. It has been questioned. Well, let's get into the bare bones of the matter. What is true and what is not? And what does all of this mean? Helping us to break down these matters into bite-sized bits, we have Dr. Patrick Assuming, Senior Lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. He joins us for this all-important conversation. We'll have others join us as we break down the facts and figures. But Doc, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on the AM show.
Good morning. Good morning to viewers. Thanks for having me.
You seem to lack some excitement this morning, and I'm saying it from just a jovial point of view. Is it on the back of your expectations not being met by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta? I mean, what is it? How would you assess yesterday's briefing or presser, if you like, and were you excited by it?
There were certainly things that will excite me, that excited me, not necessarily because I think it will solve our problems, but at least it gave us a good signal. I think it was good to see that finally government is telling us what part of the burden sharing they are going to take, because for as part of the activities to encourage Ghanaians to accept the e-levy, we've been told that times are hard and we need to contribute to burden sharing. Up to this point, we didn't really know what part of the burden government was taking. I think yesterday, we've finally been told, what government side is willing to give up or is going to give up. Not that it will make a substantial dent on our expenditures and our debt, but I think the signaling value cannot be overvalued. It cannot be understated. I think it tells us that the government side recognizes that there are difficult times and sacrifices need to be made, and then they are now showing leadership by saying that okay, this is how much we are going to do, and therefore they now have a legitimate right to ask Ghanaians to make a few more sacrifices. So on that score, I think that was good to hear.
Some people have said that this is merely symbolic. It is tokenism. Yes, they are cutting down, fuel coupons by 50%. Those in state-owned enterprises are going to take their own cuts and all of that. But what has been projected by government? Some dispute that in the first place. So first of all, let's start with just how symbolic this is. Symbolic, yes, but how symbolic? Is it meaningfully symbolic in terms of how much is involved?
I think the 3.5 in and of itself doesn't make too much. It's not going to make too much dent. And the finance minister told us that it's not like we are trying to cut substantially or reduce the deficit from what was announced in the budget. He was very clear. All of this was to ensure that we will be able to meet the target. Because if you read what the rating agencies were saying, they kept saying that they are not convinced that the 7.5 deficit reduction was going to happen, given the circumstances and the measures that the government had announced. So on that score, what I heard the finance minister do is to say, look, yes, we started on a rocky path because some of the revenues we expected are not coming in. And therefore, we are going to do these reductions, small reductions, to ensure that whatever happens, we are going to meet the deficit target. And then, we also know that earlier on, the finance minister had announced a 20% reduction in expenditures. That, I think it's not, that particular announcement is not as convincing and wasn't as specific as what we had yesterday. because I had always said, well, if you look at our expenditure items, the ones that we cannot touch, if we put them together, we are almost doing the 80%. So
Right.
if you say you cut 20%, then which ones are you going to cut? Then you end up cutting capital expenditures, which we need to boost our growth, and then you end up cutting consumption of goods and services. So for me, if there had been a little bit more explanation about specific things, as it is, the finance minister says they are discussing with the MMDAs on cutting discretionary spending. That's a different way of saying that we are probably going to cut capital expenditure. So then you have to question what our long-term strategy for boosting growth is. So it's a tricky balance. We have to take measures to shore up our government finances, but at the same time, we have to ensure that we do that in such a way that it doesn't affect the growth of the economy going forward. So you also have to like the fact that, there is some re-emphasis on what we are going to do to bring in more revenue. So we've been told that from end of next month, there's going to be strong implementation of the revised property rates. So we all hope that that really happens. And then, on the exemptions bill, there was a little bit more uncertainty in how it was put, that they are going to encourage Parliament to pass it. That means that there's no some surety, because we cannot cut our way out of this problem. It's good to rationalize expenditures, and it's good to make sure that we are getting the most from our public spending. But we can't cut our way. We simply can't do this by cutting. We have to rake in more revenue. And it shouldn't be one-time effort. It should be measures that will ensure that this year and next year and the years going forward, we have new revenue streams and we are generating more revenue. Because just one day cutting our expenses and
the feed to Doc seems to be a bit patchy right now. We'll reconnect with him so he can share his thoughts. But let's quickly bring in Dr. Joseph Obeng, GUTA president. Dr. Obeng, a very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining the conversation. Do we have Dr. Obeng with us here? Dr. Obeng, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I'm behind Gimpa. Some part of this place, the line will be off, so you should expect that. So let's talk. Yeah.
Okay. I'll bear with you. Understandable. Thank you so much once more. What is your quick appreciation of yesterday's delivery by the finance minister in terms of the measures to shore up the economy? Good news?
Yeah. If you recall, I've been saying that the time that we are in now demands a lot of sacrifices, and that government have to show the way. And this is exactly what government is doing, and I'm highly happy. I'm greatly happy about the outcome. Once government is sacrificing, then government will take us along. We are not in normal times. You remember there were times that we said that we should tighten our belt. There were times that we said that we should swallow bitter pill. And this is the time that we should also do a lot of sacrifices to salvage the economy. So it's in time. Because now, for government to have given a sound pronouncement of 2 billion injection into the economy means that they are whipping up confidence into the system, which eventually is going to stabilize the currency. Yeah. So I'm all for it.
Right. Yesterday, I interacted with Clement Boateng, I believe your national organizer, and he also shared his thoughts on some of these matters. But I just want to find out from you. So government is taking a bit of a hit, a 30% cut as far as salaries are concerned for heads of SOEs. Government expenditure itself is going to be cut down. Basically, some of what they intended doing will not be done. So there are measures across the stream, but as membership of GUTA, how is this going to impact your business? Does this mean anything for your members? That is the key question.
Yeah, What they are in effect saying is that you see they increase duties for us, and they are also taking sacrifices by way of scrapping some of their wages. Then it also satisfies us, because then it provides comfort for us that the monies that we are paying, the extra duties that we are also paying, is not going in vain, that for frivolous expenditure and all that. What is left for me is how to ensure value for money contracts, the wastage in the system. We have to be able to identify those areas of wastages and steal it, because that has been the bane of this country. We'll get the money, and then one contract alone will take it all, and without any good job also done. This is the leakages that we have been suffering all the years. And I was waiting for the finance minister to give us the assurance of how they will manage wastage in the system. And we even now we should still come out again and to assure us how we will be assured of value for money. Yeah.
So that was a downside for you. That was a disappointment for you.
Yes, sir.
Was that a disappointment for you that wasn't touched on?
Yeah, we did that because that has been the bane, the waste, and so sacrifices, yes. But if the waste continues, if the extortive contrast continues, then all this that we are doing will be in vain. And so we should find a way that we come around this issue as a broad topic, so that we will eventually be able to solve the problems of the economy.
For you, Doc, your union, I remember just some weeks back, you were talking about how much had been eroded from your purchasing power, your purchasing value, about 16%. I'm sure it is even more now, because the dollar CD ratio has gone even higher. The CD has lost even more ground to the American greenback. Now, the policy rate has also gone up, which also means that if you need to borrow from banks, it's going to be higher. This has not been technically, per what the finance minister said, was not addressed yesterday. But we know that the Bank of Ghana is going to inject some $2 billion into the system. What is your take on all of that, and how hopeful are you that it will produce something good so that members of your union can also do business and make profit?
Yeah, you know, the problem of businesses in this country has been that of capital acquisition, that the cost of borrowing has been very high. That's the reason why it has been very unfortunate for the Bank of Ghana to have rushed into increasing the policy rate. It does not augur well for businesses at all.
Did you just say that they rushed into increasing the policy rate? Is that what you said?
Yes, because some of these things are done by inflationary trends. But if you follow the inflationary trends, then you see that the push factor for this inflation is the instability of the forest, the depreciation of the city. So all that Bank of Ghana should have been doing is to make sure that we stabilize the currency so that it will suppress inflation. Now, if you say that you are going to use the policy rate to mop up excess liquidity in the system, somebody might even ask you, where is the excess liquidity when we are all saying that things are hard? So it's only going to aggravate the situation, because if you don't stabilize the currency, it means that people are going to trade in they use the excess, whatever excess liquidity that we're talking about, to trade in the forest. And so the main thing that we should have concentrated on is to ensure that we stabilize the currency, and all other things would have followed. The suppression of inflation and all that. So that if you have reverse of the inflation, then there's no need to increase the base rate. For me, that is not a good thing for businesses, because it's going to add another layer of burden, serious burden on expansion of businesses. is going to derail our efforts, even in the wake of the continental free trade. This is a blow to manufacturing companies, seriously. The cost of doing business here is very high, and that aspect is not going to help, because the banks are going to be very responsive. And that straight away is going to increase the interest rates, especially this time where turnover have gone down because of the inflation, because of the currency. It's going to be hard for people to even pay their interest rates and all that. So I think they have to look at it again and then see how we can revise it. Now that the cities seem to be doing well, let's do all we can to stabilize it, and then that alone can stabilize the inflation, suppress the inflation. Yeah.
And you say that is a big blow to companies. But so are you, now that we see the cedi appreciating marginally, yes, and we hope that it will continue so that it can get to the levels at which it was before, maybe a 5 or a 6. I feel that would be better for your group. But we've been told that within about a fortnight or maybe a month, we should really see the cedi shore up. Are you optimistic that would happen in about 2 weeks or a month's time? Do you think we can bring the cedi back to, let's say, a 5 or a 6 to the American dollar? How optimistic are you from everything you see?
It's very, very possible, because most of these things have been negative speculation. You see, now we have to talk about the gains that we are getting in the city now and speculate positively. But people do unnecessary speculation. You know, when it comes to money markets, speculation is very, very important. And that's why it raised the panic buying and all that. You see, with the information that you are going to put in $2 billion US dollars, it has brought confidence into the system, and people who were holding the monies are all bringing them back. So we have to ensure that we all are involved. We should be able to manage how we speculate around the depreciation. Otherwise, it will cause problems for all of us. So it was panic buying, and now the confidence has come, it's going down, and it will go down even further. It will surprise all of us. Once that we are making the injection, if you trade in it, you are going to lose your money.
Thank you, Dr. Obeng, for joining us for this very important conversation.
Thank you so much.
And we wish you and your members the very best. Let me now engage Fritz Moses, who is with the IES. For you, Fritz, how excited were you on the back of developments yesterday? The minority has not exactly been excited. They have said that these measures will not do much, some of them knee-jerk reactions, and that even the sums we're hoping to raise, the 3.5 billion Ghana cedis, on the back of some of these economic adjustments, will not result in securing or saving 3.5 billion. As a policy analyst, how do you read what happened yesterday? What is fact? What is fiction?
All right. Thank you, and good morning to your viewers. So I think for us at IES, what we've been clamoring for is, of course, government's ability to cut down on its expenditure, its current expenses on the energy side, and of course also to increase potential for more revenue generation. I think one of the things that we find very enthusiastic or very encouraging is the renewed commitment to continue and, of course, conclude the review of the capacity charges on the various ITPs. We think it's something that has taken far too long, because remember, somewhere in 2020, the ITPs came out saying that due to some $600 or $700 billion that was owed to them, they're going to shut down the operation. So if we can quickly conclude on those negotiations, we think we will be able to rake in the revenue that government is expecting around $1 billion by the third quarter of the year. I think these are some of the measures that government can actually look in increasing revenue. Of course, they cut down on the 50% cut down on 4 coupons for government appointees. So it's a commendable effort. I mean, we see how wasteful some of these expenditures have been, and some of these executives or appointees have been in the use of petroleum or fuel coupons. It's something that we can actually comment. But of course, government is looking at how it can also reduce its role in the current wastage that we see. Unfortunately for us, we see that for we the consumers, for the average Ghanaian, the citizens, how government can actually help, or rules or actions of government that we were expecting to be kicked in to help pushing us in these trying times, in these difficult times, where we've all seen the consistent rise in prices of petroleum products, petrol, diesel, LPG, for the past few months. I think the actions mentioned were woefully inadequate. Look at the fact that the finance minister also alluded to this fact that prices of petroleum products had risen just this year alone by 59%. And so we've seen that for diesel, there's been an addition or an increase in price of about 4 cedis. When we started the year, around 7 cedis. Now we are around 11 cedis at some point, and that's unfortunate. We also look at petrol, and we've also added about 3 cedis on the price, also around 7 cedis earlier in the beginning of the year, and we are close to 10 cedis now. And these are the real facts on the ground. But unfortunately, of course, we know also that the price would have includes taxes, margins, and levies that government has imposed, and these account for some 2 cedis 42 pesos on the price of petrol, and some 2 cedis 41 pesos on the price of diesel. And so, if government was really committed and looking at how it can actually help you consumers by cushioning us, of course, by also looking at the removal of some taxes, we are expecting government to do at least a 1 cedi reduction on its components in the price. We have, of course, the price stabilization levy of about 16 pesos. We have the boss margin of about 9 pesos. We have the UPPF margin. We also have the primary distribution margin, the store market margin. And these are things that we actually thought the government was going to look at. And of course, the sanitation and pollution levy,
right,
which were all things that we were wanting the government should review. And of course, we've heard all other communications from even the transport unions, some other entities also speaking on the fact that the government can actually go away with these things. If not in the long term, perhaps in the short term, like we heard the finance minister for the next few months, the cuts that they are making on some of the
right.
taxes. I think it could have gone further in helping us, in helping consumers.
Just to clarify, you feel they could have gone further in what?
In reducing the taxes on the price order, because if 2 cedis 43 pesos is pushing prices to around 9 cedis and 11 cedis for diesel and for petrol and diesel respectively, we think government could have done at least a reduction of about 1 cedi.
Right. Thank you so much, Fritz, for engaging as a policy analyst with the IES, sharing his thoughts that he feels government could have done more in certain areas, for example, on the price builder. But let me quickly go to Dr. Esuming once more. The connection was a bit patchy initially. Doc, if you can hear me now, I just want to find out from you, and I'll come back to you later on. But looking at the raft of measures, you say, yes, government is showing that if it's calling on us to swallow the bitter pill, it is also willing to bear some of the pain and tighten its own belt. Do you feel that we're going to be able to save, first of all, the 3.5 billion Ghana cedis that is estimated? Because some have questioned that, some economists have questioned that. And is it healthy that government is still holding on to the e-levy, which up to this point in time in the first quarter has still not seen the light of day? Should government look at something more practical, or is the e-levy still feasible? So 2 questions in one. Is government going to be able to save the 3.5 billion that it has projected? And what is your take on government still leading towards the e-levy, which has no definitiveness?
So, yeah, the first one as to whether we will be able to do the 3.5 billion, I think we should be able to do that. It's, this is people who are appointed by the government, and if the government is saying at this point we are in difficulties, that we should do some cutting, I think that part should be able to happen. As for the e-levy and whether we should still keep it, I have consistently say even though we need as much revenue as we can get, I wouldn't support the e-levy as we have it. But at the same time, I can understand why the government is very insistent on having the e-levy. Of all the revenue measures that were announced in the 2022 budget, the e-levy will be by far the easiest to implement when it's passed, and the one that will give the most revenue very quickly. If you look at the
does that mean,
rates,
very quickly, just to interject, pardon me, I've heard some analysts say that is government is looking for the lowest hanging fruit. Does that mean we are looking for low hanging fruit in this perspective in terms of the e-levy? Is the lowest hanging fruit and we're going for it?
Yes. If you look at all the alternatives that they identified in the 2022 budget, the e-levy is the lowest hanging fruit, is the easiest one to collect. But, I think, so there are question marks as to whether they'll be able to raise the amount of revenue and whether they will actually get the numbers to pass the e-levy. So, that question is still there. From my point of view, I will understand why, not given our urgent need for new revenue, why there's still a lot of focus on the e-levy. That's not to say that I think the e-levy is the way to go. I think what we have been doing for a long time with the digitization and the attempt to link our systems and records so that everybody in the informal sector, whatever you do, you'll be captured some way, somehow by the GRA, and you'll be made to pay your taxes. I think that's the long-term solution, not necessarily the e-levy. I don't think the e-levy will raise the amount of revenue government expects that it will raise, even though the government still remains adamant. But under the circumstances, you can understand that one will bring in the revenue very quickly, and then to be able to show up our expenses.
Some have said that the adamance is coming from the finance minister himself and that they should look at other things. How practical is it to continue going on that tangent when 3 months into the year, and mind you, this was hoped to be passed sometime in November, thereabouts, last year. We entered the final year. It's been basically 4 months and it hasn't seen the light of day. Is it practical to keep going on that tangent? We appear to have lost Dr. Suming. We'll get back to him. But let's rope in Duncan Amwa. Duncan, good morning to you. Broadly, how do you respond to the reliefs, the belt-tightening measures of government, even before we get into fuel and the 15 pesewa decrement?
Benjamin, good morning. Good morning to your viewers. I'm afraid the finance minister seemed to have disappointed some of us greatly, and I'm not too sure I would want to mince words about it. He could have done a lot better than he did yesterday, and we are very disappointed that of all that could have been done with fuel prices, the taxes and all, he chose to maintain every single tax on the price build-up, only to go for margins, a lot of which are simply operator margins. And so while the operators are being asked to lose 15 pesewas, the finance minister himself has lost nothing that I can confirm. So he's thrown nothing to Ghanaians.
You're saying the finance minister has thrown nothing to Ghanaians. They are talking about tightening their own belts. They are saying SOEs, heads of SOEs are taking a 30% downgrade in terms of their salaries. We're continuing to cut down, downsize, moratorium on the purchase of vehicles, importing these vehicles, among other measures. And you're saying all of that is nothing?
Well, I was specific about the petroleum price intervention, but if you want to go broadly,
and I wanted us to start broadly before we get to the petroleum bit.
Okay. I would also say that broadly, while some of the interventions announced would sound good to the ear, you and I very well know that whatever vehicles that are to be imported or to be bought for the year by March, most of that would have been done already. So if we are putting a cap back on it, the hereafter, sounds okay, but do not be surprised to see the 2022 Land Cruiser V6 twin come all over the place because a lot of importations has been done already. Again, the issue of fuel coupons being cut into two is something we had advocated for. We had actually indicated we're going to be happy to have them stop giving free fuel and probably add a little money to officials of states to buy their own fuel. It is quite clear that if they were going to the pump with their own money, no matter how much it is, then you were paying week in, week out, day in, day out, and you saw the numbers rise as rapidly. I'm certain the finance minister himself will see the need in managing fuel prices for Ghanaians. But that's a good first step as to whether they will be able to follow through with cutting back on fuel coupons and all of that. We do not know how that is going to be managed, but if
that portion is still opaque because maybe they've said one thing, but that may not necessarily apply. Is that what you're saying?
I do think so. What they say would sound good to the ear. However, whose fuel are they cutting? If an SOE has as part of its conditionalities, fuel to the tune of 100 gallons a week, and you say you are cutting, you are only varying their conditions of service to their detriment. I do not know how much, feasible that will be, but they should simply convert whatever to money and pay. Once you pay them the money and they go to the pump, instead of going to fetch with fuel coupon and they are paying, and if they paid 1,000 to fill their tanks this week and the following week is going to 1,300, 1,500, they themselves will see the need also in adding their voices to the cry by the poor Ghanaian, for fuel prices to come down. Again, the issue of cutting back some of the salaries and allowances to be given. Benjamin, good measure, but there are quite a good number of Ghanaians who don't even have salaries to be cut. So for them, if you are getting your benefits and you are cutting part of the benefits or the whatever, the largesse, and you are cutting, well, it's up to you guys. But clearly, what comes to the ordinary Ghanaian, that is what most of us were looking out for. In other countries, they are quite certain that times are rough for them. And so France will put out 2 billion to say, look, I'm going to be able to offset about 17, for every liter you buy, I'm going to offset something for you. That is what they are putting back in the pockets of the ordinary people. I am not certain the finance minister did put anything really, really significant back in the pockets of the Ghanaian, aside they cutting their own appointees' benefits and all of that. What exactly comes to Benjamin and myself sitting here? We didn't get any sense of that.
We didn't get anything. We'll quickly get into the 15 peso a bit and how this will impact OMCs and all of that moving forward. But very quickly, so are you suggesting that the 50% cut to fuel coupons, you would have wanted a 100% cut? I mean, from the way you started, you said you wanted it taken off so that they would bite the bullet, feel the full pinch of it. Would you have preferred that they have a 100% cut? So go for your own fuel. I mean, for individuals, a lot of the public workers in here.
As the leader of the government head, we would have been happy to hear the finance minister himself say that he is going to forgo all such benefits, and he probably would also forgo every other. Just to be quite clear that he is indeed setting an example and a precedent to follow, especially in these difficult times. But if it is cutting across board, Benjamin, if somebody is taking 100,000 already and you cut them by 30, they are so comfortable, as opposed to the other person who gets less than 1,000, right? So we are talking numbers here, but like I did indicate, for most of us Ghanaians, the austerity should have led to some benefit. You remember when we had the COVID pandemic, we were in a hurry to give free water, free electricity, and all of that to the people because there was a pandemic. We are in a financial pandemic, and I'm not certain any Ghanaian at this point is comfortable with the rising cost of goods and services, the higher inflationary figures we are recording. It is not something that we probably would just sit and say, times are hard. Times are difficult now for most people. If you were paying 6 cedi for petrol at the start of the year and the 10 cedis getting to 11, and it's likely to even go up again in the first week of April, then you would know that we are in a financial pandemic. And the least we would have expected will be what the state is doing for all of us to ensure that at least we keep our heads above water.
Right.
Not much of that, Benjamin, sadly.
Okay. Now we started the year in terms of the fuel prices. We started the year at around 6 cedis and 60 pesos per litre. We're hovering around 11 cedis per litre now, almost an increment of close to 5 cedis. How much was shaved off? 15 pesos. What does this mean for the OMCs? And to cap off the conversation, where else could they have gone in terms of the petroleum price buildup or the tax buildup? Where could they have made more cuts to cushion the ordinary Ghanaian?
Well, so Benjamin, my good self and the team from COPEC, together with the team from Senior Hostess Chamber, the Seaboard, Madam Iviosu Apia and Elton Ducey, met the National Petroleum Authority led by Mustafa Hamid, Perry Okujeto, Stella and Abbas, met with the Energy Minister, Honorable Dr. Matthew Poku Prempe, and the Deputy Ejafa Mesa, met with the Finance Minister, Kendo Kuriata, and the Deputy Charles Boahinedu, I'm told it, Deputy for State, and then Abena Osei, I'm told. We had a meeting on this on Monday, and as part of the discussion, we were asked to at least also discuss what we felt could be done immediately to mitigate the hardship on Ghanaians. We took the time to go through the price build-up one after the other. Some of the measures that we would have thought would give relief to Ghanaians included easing down on the overbearing taxes, not only margin. Taxes, not only margin. You have taxes.
So Duncan, for the sake of time, which of the taxes could we have done more with, and maybe at what percentage? Briefly.
That's exactly what I was coming to. You have taxes like the special petroleum tax.
Right.
That is 46 pesos. That tax had been introduced when crude prices were low and government needed a revenue, assurance. So it introduced that tax in order that it could make up for the crude that we are exporting, the prices it was getting. 46 pesos. We had indicated, well, you may not be able to give all 46, but cut it into two. Let government still collect 23, give the consumer 23. We were clear that you cannot continue to charge people stabilization and recovery levy because you are supposed to use part of that money to stabilize fuel prices by way of giving it to the BDCs when prices go up, in order that they do not add the new prices to the pump for Ghanaians. We have never done that. So don't continue to take 16 pesos for petrol, 14 pesos for diesel, when you can actually cut that one also into two and use part for your premix and RFO subsidy. So we were clear that you could have gotten 8 pesos for price stabilization, you could have gotten 23 pesos for the special petroleum tax. You could have also seen a net reduction of the sanitation and pollution levy, which is 10 pesos. We said times are not normal. People still pay for dumping their refuse anyway. Zoom Lion would come knocking, the assemblies would come knocking. So if you took out that 10 pesewa for 3 months, it wouldn't hurt anything. We were quite clear that the newly introduced energy sector levy of 20 pesewas could also give way. And so were we clear that the bust margin of 9 pesewas was a bit too high and could be reduced to about, say, 4 pesewas for 3 months, so that bust could operate as efficiently as the other private depots who do not get a pesewa from the Ghanaian, because they are simply doing what the other depots are also doing currently.
Okay.
You hold
Right.
products for BDCs, you transmit, transfer, take your charges. So you are doing nothing differently from what the private depots are doing. We indicated 4 pesewas. But look at the outcome. We decided that the taxes, we won't touch any of them. We have gone for margin. The UPPF is a margin paid to oil transporters. At the time that prices have gone up, right, we have reduced their transport rate. So what fuel are they going to now use to transport the fuel across, the country?
Right.
PDM is also a transporter's margin. You've reduced the PDM also. At the time fuel is up at 10 cedis. You've reduced it. So what fuel are they now going to buy to transport the petrol from Accra to Wa to Paga to Ouagadougou, everywhere else they have to go?
Right.
So,
Interesting.
Yes, there's quite a lot that will come up in the coming week. The margin would create a lot of issues for these operators, I'm certain.
Okay.
The taxes that would have inconvenienced the finance ministry at least for 3 months, he took not a pesewa off, and that is disappointing.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Duncan, for sharing your thoughts there. Unfortunately, we don't have all the time, but interesting points you've raised. Let me wrap with Dr. Suming. And right after that, we're activating the phone lines to hear from you. What do you think about the measures that have been adopted? Is government tightening its belt enough? And the 15 pesewa decrease at the pumps, how does that rub off on you? You'll be sharing with us shortly. But Dr. Suming, so moving forward, 15 pesewa decrease when it comes to what we're getting at the pumps, the value, and then the generality moving forward, how this is going to impact our economy. So focus on 15 pesewas decreased, and then what do you look forward to moving forward in terms of this raft of measures that have been brought to bear?
15 pesewas per liter is quite small compared to the recent increases we've seen this year. But, we have to understand that there are two main reasons for the recent increases: the currency depreciation and the rise in the crude oil prices on the world market. So if the measures that are being put in place to address the currency depreciation works, then we should expect that on some level, maybe on that score, the fuel prices may come down in the next few weeks or few months. So that is clear. And then we also have to understand that the recent huge jump is really from the Ukraine-Russia crisis. So if in the near future that crisis gets resolved, it's possible that the fuel prices will come down. And I agree that what many Ghanaians were expecting was that some of the taxes would have been removed, but that wasn't done. So in terms of broadly going forward with these measures, I do hope that the finance ministry is really able to address the revenue measures that it has listed. I think that is very important. As for the expenditure measures, I think they are going to make only a small dent on our expenditure side. But it's the revenue measures that are important. Finally, we didn't hear too much about what will be done to address the real sector of the economy. The finance minister kept saying that the economy grew reasonably well, especially in the third quarter, 6.6. That is true. And we have been growing, before the COVID, the economy had been growing at a reasonably good pace. What has not been happening, though, is that the growth has been transformed into job creation for the teeming masses. And I think that has to be addressed. It's not enough to keep saying that we are growing at this much. The sectors that have been growing, ordinary Ghanaians have not been benefiting as much as they could have. So it's okay to say the growth levels are fine, but we need specific measures to ensure that we reduce our dependence on imports. That didn't get too much mention. Obviously, the finance minister chose to focus on the relatively short-term measures that will address the government finances side. But what we need going forward is an economy that is growing, generating a lot of jobs, and then increasing our production to the extent that we are going to cut down on imports. The 2 billion loans that we are going to get is not going to be the long-term solution to the city's problem. Because if you check over the last few years, what has been happening is that every first quarter, we take an euro bond, and that was what has been shoring up the city. If we do this, if we get this 2 billion and the city stabilizes, and by next year, we resume our old habit of importing everything and the economy being heavily dependent on foreigners and foreign investment, then we will come back to the same problem. Because the underlying problem of we importing so little, we exporting so much compared to our exports, will resume the depreciation of the currency. So I think while we are taking these relatively short-term measures, we also have to take the medium to long-term measures to strengthen the productive base of the economy and to ensure that the economy is producing a lot and Ghanaians are heavily involved in the production so that we diversify our exports. That didn't get too much mention. And I think going forward, that is an area that we have to address strongly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suming. It's been good, interacting with you. Thank you so much for making the time to break down the matters into bite-sized bits for us.